Welcome back to the channel. I apologize for missing out last week. Scheduling conflict. Anyway, this week we're going to be talking about New York. New York is one of those famous cities and states in the United States. I'm not entirely sure that people outside of the United States understand that New York is a state and a city in said state. But I do know that there's things, I shouldn't say things, that when you're talking to someone who is foreign to the United States, especially if you are over in that country and they have never actually visited the United States, that a lot of times they have this picture of the United States. And if you say, like, hey, I'm from this certain state, they have no idea what you mean. But if you say it's near New York or it's by California, they're like, oh, okay, I understand where New York is. It's on the East Coast. I understand where California is out on the West Coast. They use these as landmarks when they're thinking about the United States. That's how prominent they are in media and in culture. So New York was named in honor of the Duke of York. So in the 17th century, the English captured the territory that would become New York from the Dutch. At that point in time, it was called New Amsterdam. And then they renamed it for the Duke of York. So, yeah. The name York comes from northern England. The city of York is in northern England. It's a very, very ancient city. It was apparently, it has pre-Roman roots and all the way into the modern, English history. Apparently, the pre-Roman times it was called the Eboracon, something like that, place of the yew trees, and then in the Roman era it was Eboracum. Then the Anglo-Saxons arrived and they changed it to Eoforwic, something of that. I'm butchering these, I'm sure. Viking era it became Jorvik. And then from Jorvik, it became York. So that's where we get New York from. It's called the Empire State because of the wealth and the resources that are available in the state. The nickname actually harks back to the days of pre-revolutionary America. George Washington, or at this point it would have been revolutionary era in the United States. George Washington apparently wrote a letter in 1785, and he referred to New York as the seat of the empire. Then it became a very economic and influential commercial power in the 19th and 20th centuries, and the Erie Canal being a particular commercial waterway that was used at that point in time, connecting the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, and New York City had a large commercial advantage at that point in time, and so yeah, it became the Empire State. And we also, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people look at that and think, well, the Empire State Building is in New York. So that's why it's the Empire State Building was named after the fact that New York was considered the Empire State rather than the other way around. All right, so on to the facts about New York. Statehood was given to New York, July 26th, 1788, making it the 11th state in the Union. The capital of New York is Albany. This is one of the instances where the largest city, the most prominent city in the state, is not in fact the capital, which is, for the most part, it's rather rare in my experience that the capital is not as important as another city in the state. But there are a few, New York being one. Population 20 million, making it the fourth most populous state. It covers an area of 54,555 square miles, or 141,297 kilometers squared. It's the 27th largest state. And then the largest cities, four largest cities in New York are New York City, Buffalo, Yonkers, and Rochester. So you can see from at least two of these that there are quite a lot of English influences in the state. Although the state does have also a lot of Dutch influences, as we will get into. So, in 1524, Giovanni da Verrazzano was an Italian explorer. He was actually in the service to the French, and they visited the area 1524-ish. Then the Dutch came in 1609. They established the colony of New Netherland, which included New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Connecticut. So quite a large area. And they established the city of New Amsterdam, which would later become New York. It was on the southern tip of what we call Manhattan Island, and that was the capital of the colony. Then 1664, the English took control, and they renamed New York in, as I said before, in honor of the Duke of York, and who later became King James II of England. So, interestingly enough there. Then we have the American Revolution, with New York being quite pivotal, having a pivotal role, though New York was actually occupied by the British for most of the war. There were a number of important battles, Battle of Saratoga, that occurred in the state. The Erie Canal was opened in 1825, which kind of ushered in that westward expansion, and the economic influence, the commercial influence of New York expanded at that point, because they were shipping goods down the Erie Canal into the Great Lakes area. Excuse me. Then we have the industrialization that happened in the 19th and 20th centuries, and then we have the modern era with post-World War II. There was a lot of changes and a lot of stuff going on in New York. There's a lot of, as you know, Empire State Building, United Nations, that's all headquartered there. There was a lot of crime during the 60s and 70s, and they've attempted since then to, as they say, revitalize the area so that it they were able to get away from those bad influences. Not that they're going to 100% remove those bad influences. New York City and its state are densely populated, and you just kind of can't get away from that kind of stuff. And then, of course, with September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Center was destroyed in some terrorist attacks, and so we have basically that brief history to catch us up with New York. Geographically speaking, New York, and I'm going to have some stuff here because New York is very geographically diverse for how small it is. It's partially on the coastal plain, so it has it has some beaches along the Atlantic coast, and it's relatively flat. We have the Hudson Valley. We have that's in the Adirondack Mountains. We have the Catskill Mountains that are located on the west side of the Hudson River. As I said, the Adirondack Mountains as well. We have the Central and Western Plateau. There's the Finger Lakes and the hills and things that are out in that area. Then, because of the Great Lakes, it's actually on the Great Lakes plain as well, so it has that water on both sides. Then we have the Allegheny Plateau and the St. Lawrence Valley as well that are part of the Appalachians, and then part of the St. Lawrence River that comes down from Lake Ontario to the Adirondack Mountains. So the state is quite geographically diverse for, as I said, for how small it is. In the climate area, Allegheny. I was pronouncing it right. Allegheny. The Allegheny Plateau. Let me fix that pronunciation. Okay, so for the most part, New York is considered to have a humid continental climate, but they have the downstate and the coastal, the upstate, inland, and then the Adirondack Mountains that kind of make up the three different climate areas. So the downstate and the coastal, that's around New York, Long Island, Lower Hudson Valley, and that is more humid subtropical. The winters there tend to be milder, and the summers being hot and humid. And then they have the upstate, as I said, which is humid continental, and they get colder winters, more snowfall. They have, because they're close to the Great Lakes, they have what's called the lake effect. I don't know what it would be called in other areas of the world, but basically because the lakes are right there, they pick up a lot of moisture as the storm fronts move across the lakes, and so when they do end up snowing or raining or whatever the case may be, it increases the snowfall because of the large body of water that those storm fronts passed over. So they have that, and then also you have the Adirondacks, which are a subarctic or boreal climate, and so they have higher elevations and they get colder and snowier. The rainfall, 30 to 45 inches of rain annually. Snowfall, they, as I said, it's actually one of the snowiest places in the United States because of that lake effect. But New York and Long Island receive around 20 to 30 inches of snow annually. Then we have the temperature, which fluctuates in the summer 80s and 90s Fahrenheit, which is 27 to 34 degrees Celsius. And the winters, it goes down to the teens and below zero, which is really cold for Fahrenheit, considering that freezing in the Fahrenheit scale is 32 degrees Celsius. So it's even colder. It's into the negatives in the Celsius scale. They do get hurricanes, but not as much as other parts of the United States. They have a particular type of storm that can get pretty bad. They call it a nor'easter, which is kind of it's portmanteau. No, that's not the right word for it. Basically, it's kind of a slang abbreviation for northeaster. So it's a storm that comes from the northeast, comes from the northeast, and it causes a lot of rain, snow, coastal flooding, that kind of stuff. And then since they're there, they get, they're on the Atlantic, so they are influenced as well by the Atlantic Ocean there. Okay, so on to industry. Industry, you will probably not be surprised that New York industry is dominated by finance and insurance. Then we get real estate, healthcare, social assistance, professional and technical services, retail, trade, media, entertainment, tourism, hospitality, of course, education, manufacturing, technology, and agriculture. So the state is quite diverse as far as its industry goes. Some of the biggest finance companies: J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. On the insurance side, MetLife, New York Life Insurance Company, AIG. Moving on to to real estate, you have the related companies: Tishman Speyer, Douglas Elliman, the Durst Organization. Healthcare, we have New York Presbyterian Hospital, Mount Sinai Health Systems, Northwell Health, NYU Langone Health, Montefiore Health Systems. Into the professional and technical companies, there's Skadden Arps, Slate, Meager and Flom, LLP, Sullivan and Cromwell, Ogilvy, Young and Rubicam, IBM, Datadog, Pentagram. There's tons that go through here. Retail trade, we have Macy's, Saks Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's, Tiffany, Barnes & Noble, Foot Locker. Media and entertainment, Walt Disney actually had. So Walt Disney is headquartered in California, but they have a significant presence in New York. Warner Media, Viacom, CBS, NBC, Universal, New York Times, 20th Century Fox. We have. We're going as always, we're skipping tourism and hospitality for now. We're going on to education. So Columbia, New York University, Cornell, Scholastic, 2U, Newton. Again, list goes on. Manufacturing, there's Corning, Pfizer, Estee Lauder, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, Kodak, the Eastman Kodak Company, IBM, Lockheed Martin. Technology, IBM, as mentioned before, Bloomberg, LP, Etsy apparently has a base there in New York, WeWork, Datadog, Peloton. Into technology, went past. So we did the manufacturing. Then we went to technology. Okay, so I kind of got myself lost there. And now we're on to to agriculture. So Chobani, Upstate Niagara Cooperative, Phage Dairy Farm, Dairy Industry, Maclay Orchards, Constellation Brands. So those are some of the biggest companies that are there in New York that drive the different industries. Sure, you've heard of a lot of those. They're world-renowned. On to tourism. Of course, hiking, camping, boating, fishing, skiing, those are all activities that are popular in the state for tourism. The thing is you might not think, especially being outside of the United States, of the hiking, camping, boating, fishing, skiing. A lot of times when you think of tourist activities, you think Statue of Liberty, Times Square, Central Park. Maybe Niagara Falls. From what I've heard, Niagara Falls is more impressive on the Canada side than it is on the United States side. I have been to New York, but not for any length of time. It's basically flying stopover on a flight to another part of the world, and so I have never actually visited Times Square or Central Park or Niagara Falls or basically anywhere. I went to the JFK airport twice. So anyway, the thing is that, like I said, most people concentrate on the Statue of Liberty, on Times Square, on Central Park, on Niagara Falls, and they don't necessarily get out of the state or get out into the state. And so there are hiking opportunities, camping, there's boating, fishing, skiing. Water skiing, and snow skiing are both popular in New York. The Finger Lakes, as I mentioned before, the Adirondack Mountains, the Catskills. The National Baseball Hall of Fame is in Cooperstown. There's the Hudson Valley, the Hamptons and Montauk, Thousand Islands, Saratoga Springs. There's a lot of historic sites. Harriet Tubman House in Auburn, Roosevelt Home in Hyde Park, Martin Van Buren National Historic Site in Kinderhook. There's tons of stuff. World-renowned MoMA, Metropolitan Museum of Art, is in New York. There's tons of Broadway shows, Broadway being in New York. So there's tons to do in New York, rather than just focus on New York City itself and the stuff that's there. Although, to be honest, going to New York City itself, it might be that if you can swing it and you like New York, that you go to New York, you stay in New York City, you do a bunch of things in New York City, and then you come back later and you do the rest of New York, because there you go. There's a lot to do in New York. All right, on to the trivia portion. These may or may not... The thing is that some of the information here is a bit old and maybe unverifiable. So apparently after 10 p.m. in New York, it was rumored, urban legend, something that you couldn't wear slippers past 10 p.m. Which, why would you not wear slippers past 10 p.m.? I don't understand that. Flirting. Law fined men $25 for turning around on a city street and looking at a woman in that way. Apparently, if you did it again, you could be sentenced to wearing horse blinders. Now, if you're not familiar with horse blinders, if you've seen like old movies where the horses have these two big like black things next to their face, those are horse blinders. Adultery was still a misdemeanor in New York until 2020. Ice cream couldn't be sold on Sundays. Tattoos, you couldn't give somebody a tattoo in New York until 1997. Puppet shows, apparently there was an old law that made it illegal to do a puppet show. And then if you had a donkey, there's a town called Inwood. It was illegal for a donkey to sleep in a bathtub. Yeah, so there you go. The Midnight Run, Central Park, New Year's Eve. They race at the stroke of midnight. Manhattan Henge, so twice a year, and this is a picture of it. Twice a year, the sunset aligns perfectly with the streets in Manhattan, and so you can see it just looking down the street. You can see the sunset. There's a Potter's Field public burial ground. 20,000 bodies might still be buried there in Washington Square Park. In the Grand Central Terminal, there's an acoustic anomaly where you can whisper and someone on the opposite corner will hear it as if you're standing next to them, which is awesome. Massive. So they have the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which has all the balloons, the cartoon characters and stuff. That's been going on since 1924. Let's see. There's a New York drink called the Egg Cream. It's milk, seltzer, chocolate syrup. It has no egg, no cream, but it's called the Egg Cream. I don't know. The Feast of San Gennaro. This is held in Little Italy in New York City. Huge procession for Saint Januarius, or San Gennaro, who was the patron saint of Naples. And then we have rent parties, which is rather interesting. Where did I have there we go. So Harlem. They would throw parties to help pay for their rent. So this is something that has been going on for some time now. And sometimes they'd have these like not quite impromptu, but basically they'd have some pretty big names come and perform at these parties and stuff, and they'd use it to pay their rent. So there you go. That's it for New York. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think of New York. Let me know if you've been there. Let me know if I got something wrong. As always, till later.